Hey everybody, it's Amanda and we are making potatoes. I have a bunch of potatoes, let me show you. Here we go. I have one bag of red potatoes, probably about half a bag. And it's just kind of been sitting around here. And then we had 2 bags of russets that we got, and we got them at a good price, but they've kind of been sitting around, and since I work, it's very time consuming to actually cook real potatoes at night, but I'd much rather have real potatoes. So I'm gonna try to do a meal prep kind of cook where I'm gonna make 2 different things. So one thing I'm gonna make in this video is mashed potatoes. I'm gonna make a big batch of mashed potatoes, freeze them in little bags, and then I will heat them up at night whenever we wanna have them for a side dish. I'll show you how I do that. And I'm actually gonna take the red potatoes and the russets, and we're gonna make a big batch of freezer roasted potatoes that we can have as a side dish, almost like French fries or hash browns, but just something that's flavorful and tasty and we can use. So first things first, mashed potatoes. I'm actually making 2 different kinds. We're gonna go ahead and peel this entire bag. And once I do that, we are gonna get started. So let's get to peeling. Okay, so let me show you what I have ready. I have a pot with some water in it. It's not filled up very much at all, but you know, I wanna make sure I have room for the potatoes that I have. Cutting board, potato peeler, a good knife, and my potatoes. Of course, I have a trash can ready here as well to catch the peelings. We're gonna go ahead and cut it, well, peel it first, and then cut it up to a small dice, because the smaller the dice, the quicker it'll cook, and put it in the pan, and we'll get on to the next step. Peel 2 at a time and then cut it, because I don't want it to sit out in the air too long. It'll start to turn brown and change colors. So it doesn't really hurt it if you let it do that, but it just doesn't look as pretty. So we'll go ahead and dice it up real small, and then we'll put it in the pot to soak and wait, and then we'll get started on the next 2 potatoes. Okay, so there were so many potatoes that I ended up having to fill my big pot and then my large medium-sized pot with potatoes. So this one was about 9 potatoes, large size ones, and this one was 4. And I'm gonna add a little salt into them and boil them until they're soft. The first step of any mashed potatoes with the lid on. So I need to get a new correct lid for this pot, but anyway, we're gonna let these cook probably about 15 minutes for them to be soft. Once they get boiling, I'm gonna go ahead and get those on a high boil and turn it down, and let it cook after I put a little salt in it. Probably just a sprinkle, maybe a teaspoon in this one and half a teaspoon in that. And we'll get these cooked up, and then we'll be ready to mash some potatoes. I'm going to show you how to make roasted potatoes using these 2. With this recipe, the benefit of this recipe is super easy. We're not even going to peel these potatoes, but what we are going to do is give them a really good scrub, because we are going to leave the skins on. So, step 1, scrub the potatoes. Let's get started. I have a large sink, so I just dump my potatoes in. And I'm just going to literally just take some hot water and the scrubby part of my sponge and just scrub them down. They don't have to be perfect. I'm just gonna try to get the majority of the dirt off. So let me go ahead and get that started. Cleaning your potatoes, if you find that any of them have a bad spot, like this one right here, can you see that? Or Like this one is starting to sprout eyes a little bit. When we cut it, we're gonna go ahead and cut those parts off first, and then we're gonna dice up our potatoes. So I'm gonna go ahead and take these over to the cutting board and dice them up into small pieces. Again, I prefer to cut them up small so it takes less time to cook, but we're gonna go ahead and cut the bad spots off, dice them up. And by the way, while we're cutting them up, I'm gonna go ahead and start preheating the oven to 400 degrees. I've taken out a bowl. When we are done dicing these up, I'm actually probably gonna need 2 bowls. We're gonna put half in one and half in the other. But when we're done dicing them, we're gonna put them in the 2 bowls because the 2 bowls are what we are going to add our seasoning to. So let me go ahead and get the 2 bowls out. We'll start dicing everything up and get it ready to be seasoned. Slice this one open. I found a bad spot in the middle. It's actually pretty simple. You're just going to cut it out and get rid of that little spot. And we'll just put that aside. Same thing, it goes through this layer. And we'll get rid of it. And when we go through the pieces as we cut them, if we see anything else that's bad, we'll pull them out. One bowl complete, and underneath that is the russet potatoes. I have the red potatoes on top. We are going to add some oil, some olive oil to this. You can use other oil if you like, but I like olive oil. And a word about seasoning. So here's how I handle seasoning. I gather the seasoning as the Holy Spirit guides, and I gather whatever it is I feel inclined to do and don't measure it. And I think that's, you know, what most cooks do. I'm going to try to give you my best measure, but you can add a little more, a little bit less, depending on what you like. And let me also say that you can use different seasonings. Sometimes I use paprika, sometimes I don't. You can use ranch seasoning. You can use a lot of different things. I don't have ground mustard here. I totally would use ground mustard if I had it, but I'm actually out and I need to find it. So I'm going to show you what I'm doing today, and season as the Spirit leads you. Here we go. As far as oil goes, we want about 2 to 3 tablespoons. We want about 2 to 3 tablespoons depending on how many potatoes you have. Again, we'll let the Spirit whisper. And then I'm going to add some salt, generously. Of course, this is my Himalaya pink salt, so we're just gonna generously salt the top. And my pepper. As far as salt goes for this much potatoes, which is probably half a 5-pound bag, I would probably say that I did about a teaspoon of salt, maybe a teaspoon of pepper. We'll add a tablespoon or so of Italian seasoning, a teaspoon of onion powder, a teaspoon of garlic powder, and you know, I'm adding paprika. This is sweet paprika, by the way, not smoked, and smoked is another great option. I'm just going to add a little bit to it because I don't know who's going to be eating these, and you know, for some people that's spicy. I'm not saying for all people, certainly not for me, but you know, it is what it is. Take that as you will, but I want to make sure that as many people can enjoy it as possible. And of course, when we're actually eating them, you can add more seasoning if you'd like. So that is what we are going to be doing, and we're going to stir it up because we want to make sure that oil gets on all the potatoes as well as all the seasoning. And you'll notice next to me I have a Pampered Chef pan. Because it's a Pampered Chef pan, I don't have any kind of preparations on it. Everything should come up off of it really easily, but you want to make sure you're using some kind of non-stick pan of your choice, either spraying a non-stick spray, even though it's already coated in oil, you know, just to be safe. You don't want anything sticking if you have like an aluminum pan or something like that. So just make sure it's non-stick. You can use a glass pan. You can use whatever it is you have. Whoop. All right. There we go. So once we get that done, we are going to spread it out. And we're going to try to spread it out so that everything is flat. We don't want big mountains or peaks or valleys. We want it just all to kind of take up the whole space. There we go. We're going to throw that in the oven and then we'll prepare our second batch. Okay, so the mashed potatoes are now done. They're done cooking. And I have everything ready to make my mashed potatoes. First of all, I have my KitchenAid mixer ready and prepared. I like salt, pepper, onion powder, and this is nutritional yeast in my potatoes. And I use butter and sour cream for my dairy and my fats. Again, you can use it however you wish. Because this is an estimate of how many potatoes, again, as I have said many times, let the Holy Spirit whisper to me how much I should put in. You know, when you do this for a long time, you kind of eyeball it, but it's probably going to be a heaping scoop of this and probably 4 tablespoons of the butter. I can always, when I reheat it, add more, but I do want to get at least some of it in to begin with. And as far as the salt and the pepper, I'm just going to sprinkle about a teaspoon of each, probably half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of the onion powder and a good teaspoon or 2 of the nutritional yeast. So let's go ahead and get that going. You'll notice that I did drain my potatoes and they are soft to the touch, so we'll toss them in here. If I was making mashed potatoes for dinner tonight, this is the point where I would actually taste it to see if the seasoning was right. Now, because this is mashed potatoes that is going to go in my freezer, I'm actually going to go ahead and just let it cool as is, because when I reheat it, I will be adding additional water to it and the seasoning is going to change. I'm going to add a little more, a little less of everything. So this is not the final seasoning. This is just a little bit to get it started. Maybe it'll be good when I finish it up, but if not, that's totally fine too. Because like I said, we're reheating it. We're going to be adding a little water, maybe adding a little more fats. So all we're going to do at this point is take that bowl, cover it, and put it in the fridge and let it cool completely. And then we're gonna be scooping it into bags to get it ready for the freezer. Okay, I pulled the roasted potatoes out just to see how they were doing the first batch. And the way that I'm gonna check it is I'm just gonna scrape the bottom here, because underneath will sometimes brown when the top does not brown, especially when it's so thickly packed like this. If we were going to eat this tonight, I would cook it another 10 or 15 minutes, but because these are going in the freezer, and we are going to put them back in the oven to heat them up, we do not want them any more brown than this. We want them just, this might even be a little too brown, just slightly starting to brown. Okay, about a half hour should do you. And again, it depends on how densely it's packed and how small your pieces are. Okay, because the smaller pieces will cook through quicker. So since this is done, we're gonna let this cool down. I still have the other one in the oven. Whew. But we're gonna let this cool down completely and then we'll pack it in bags. We're gonna finish up the other one, let it cool down, and then we are going to pack them in bags to go in the freezer. Okay, so my potatoes have cooled down enough that I can bag them, and I am just using a quart-sized bag, just a small bag. And I find that for Rick and I, a half a bag is more than enough for us to have as side dishes for a meal. If you want to pack away more than that for if you have guests, that's totally cool. But I'm gonna do half a bag full for mine. And then I'm going to flatten them out and let them freeze nice and flat so they don't take up too much storage space. Okay, you guys, so I actually let the potatoes sit in the fridge until the next day, and the roasted potatoes have already been in the freezer. So you can see they're frozen nice and flat. And when we're ready to take them out, we're gonna put them right back on our Pampered Chef pan or whatever pan you cook them in. And we're gonna put them in the oven, 400, 425 for about 10-15 minutes. We're just gonna keep an eye on it and see when it's cooked through that it's warm enough and starting to brown, and they'll be perfect. In terms of the mashed potatoes, once they freeze, and again, look how nice and flat that is perfect for storage. When it's time to cook them, I actually just take this out, and these bags are great because they rip right open. And I just set this in a pan with a little water to cover the bottom, and I'll heat it up to boiling and keep stirring it on kind of a low medium heat on the stove. And then I'll, taste it and check the seasoning. Make sure you don't put too much water in it. Not too much water, just a little bit of water. You can add it a little bit at a time, but just add a little bit at a time water, keep stirring it, and then check your seasoning. And then these are perfect just to heat up and have homemade potatoes at night. Thank you guys very much for coming and hanging out with me yet again. I'm trying really hard to get some little freezer side dishes and meals to help me during the week, and plus making sure I'm using up things and they're not going to waste. And so I hope this was helpful to you. If ever you find a really good deal on potatoes, I think this is something good to do. I love having the roasted potatoes. We use the roasted potatoes a lot for like breakfast dinners, and mashed potatoes are great for everything. So anyway, you all have a wonderful day. Thank you for hanging out with me yet again. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.